Hello everyone. So in this video we'll discuss the Indian Express of 11th October. So let us start with the newspaper. So as you can see here that this is the explained section of Indian Express, and for the upcoming examinations like CLAT or NLUD, this section is very relevant, which is explained section of this newspaper, right? So let us discuss about some of the news related to explained section. So as you can see here, first is what hottest September says about climate change. So basically the theme here is again environment and climate change. So this is related to this. So I'll explain what this article says. It talks about El Nino and the warming conditions of India in these coming times, and 2023 was the warmest year as per them, and the coming 3 months are also going to be the warmest as per the predictions. So we'll discuss this. Then the other three articles are related to Israel and Palestine conflict. So for Israel and Palestine conflict, we will going to make a video on the whole scenario of Israel and Palestine, the whole conflict, and the everything in and around this conflict. So you can just refer to that video for the Israel and Palestine conflict. In this video, we're going to discuss this first topic, which is in respect to climate change, and then some of the historical aspect like Gandhi was related to this conflict, like Gandhi mentioned in his Harijan some of the facts related to Jews and the state of Palestine. So in this video we'll discuss these two articles. So let us start with the first one. So as you can see here, it talks about September has turned out to be the hottest September ever by a big margin, and 2023 will emerge as the warmest year ever, overtaking the record set in 2016. Now the scientists had been expecting this year to be very warm, mainly because of the development of El Nino in the Pacific Ocean. Even though individual events could not be predicted, the remaining 3 months of the year, which is October, November, and December, are also forecast to be warmer than usual. Now, July this year was not just the warmest July, it was the warmest for any month. That means that the average global monthly temperature has never been as high as in July this year. Now, before that, June was the warmest June ever, while Feb, March, and April and May all recorded average temperatures that were in the top 5 highest ever brackets for those respective months. Now, in addition, the 3 month period between June and August was the warmest ever on record, during which temperatures everywhere across the world, not just the global average, reached levels that were made at least 2 times more likely by climate change. Now, the average global temperature for September was 1.75 degrees Celsius warmer than the average of the 1850 to 1900 period, the pre-industrial time that is usually considered the baseline for measuring temperature changes. Now, no other month, not even July this year, showed such a large deviation from the pre-industrial average. Now, September was very warm, even when compared to a more contemporary baseline, 0.93 degrees Celsius hotter than the average of the 1991 to 2020 period. Now, these facts are very relevant for the examination. It can be asked in any format, right? So just you can just write down these facts related to climate change. Now, since June, the world has experienced unprecedented heat on land and sea. The temperature are enormous, far bigger than anything we have ever seen in the past. The Antarctic winter sea ice extent was the lowest on record for the time of year. What is especially worrying is that the warming El Nino event is still developing, so we can expect these record breaking temperatures to continue for months with cascading impacts on our environment and society. Now, it was the statement made by Secretary General of World Meteorology Organization. Now, the reason scientists are expecting 2023 to emerge as the warmest year ever is that the average temperature of the first 9 months is already higher than the corresponding period of 2016, which is the warmest year on record so far. Now, the average temperature for the year 2016 was 1.28 degrees Celsius higher than the pre industrial times, and it is feared that 2023 might breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark for the first time. Now, the average global temperature for the first 9 months of 2023 is 0.52 degrees Celsius higher than the corresponding 1991 to 2020 average. Now, basically, till now, this article basically compares the temperature difference of this year with respect to the baseline and some of the temperatures in 1991 to 2020 phase. Now, what little to do in the short term so that we can tackle this change? So, as you can see here, the series of record breaking temperature events this year has attracted huge attention in the scientific community, which has been repeatedly flagging it as something completely abnormal, even when seen in the context of serially rising temperatures in the past few years. Now, many of the heat wave events this year, including one in the unlikely month of April, have been attributed to climate change by scientific studies. But this hasn't triggered any policy response from countries in the form of strengthened climate actions. To be sure, there is little that human beings can do to bring down the temperatures next month or next year. There is no climate action that can arrest the rise of temperatures or prevent the recurrence of such warming events in the short term. Now, only a massive global disruptions like something like COVID-19 pandemic is capable of making any appreciable deviation in the current trend over a short period of time. So basically, the article is saying that आपको पता है जैसे COVID आया था, so there was a lockdown in the entire nation, and that is how CO2 emissions बहुत कम हो गए थे because there was no transportation sector that was going on, cars नहीं थे, then carbon emission बहुत कम हो गया था. So COVID-19 somehow helped us in tackling climate change because at that time CO2 emissions बहुत कम हो गए थे. So this is how they compare this thing कि अभी जैसा warming event हो रहा है, we have to tackle climate change, and something like COVID-19 can help. But again, we don't want something like COVID-19 again, obviously, for so many reasons, right? Now, let's see the next paragraph of this article. But the extraordinary warming events of this year have not been able to instill any special sense of urgency in the planet's plan of action to deal with climate change. The world is almost certain to breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target in the next 4 years, according to an assessment by again WMO. Now, the only clear deliverable from the climate discussions this year has been the promise to triple the renewable energy installed capacity from its current levels by 2030. And this was one of the outcomes of the G20 meeting in New Delhi last month. So there's a New Delhi declaration that talks about the same, right? Now, the International Energy Agency estimates that the single measure could result in an avoidance of 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. But this, even if achieved, would be too little. Assessments show that greenhouse gas emissions in 2030, according to current trajectories, would exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius compatible levels by at least 24 billion tons by 2030. So again, in this article, you just have to refer every fact related to climate change and the comparison of this two eras. Like currently we are comparing to 1991 to 2020 period, the CO2 level and how we can tackle. They also mentioned like G20 summit, New Delhi declaration, right? So these are the things that are important. Now let us see the next article. Why Gandhi was against a Jewish state in Palestine, right? So this article mentioned the Harijan, which was written by Gandhiji, right? So Gandhiji, the Harijan was a weekly magazine, as you can see here, founded by Gandhi, in which he expressed his views regularly on a range of subjects. Now it is related to Israel and Palestine conflict. Now let's see what was his sympathy for Jews, right? So it was in this book Gandhi wrote in the Jews, my sympathies are all with the Jews. They have been untouchables of Christianity. The parallel between their treatment by Christians and the treatment of untouchables by Hindus is very close. Religious sanction has been invoked in both cases for the justification of the inhuman treatment meted out to them. He also wrote that the German persecution of the Jews seems to have no parallel in history and expressed his concern with Britain's policy of placating Adolf Hitler at the time. Now, if there ever could be a justifiable war in the name of and for humanity, a war against Germany to prevent the wanton persecution of a whole race would be completely justified. Now, what are his concerns for Arabs? So, Mahatma did not support a Zionist state in Palestine, as per him. So, it is wrong and inhumane to impose the Jews on the Arabs. It would be a crime against humanity to reduce the proud Arabs so that Palestine can be restored to the Jews, partly or wholly, as their national home. His opposition was based on two principal beliefs. First, that Palestine was already home to Arab Palestinians and the settlement of Jews, which Britain actively enabled, was fundamentally violent. And second, Gandhiji felt that the idea of a Jewish homeland was fundamentally antithetical towards their fight for greater rights elsewhere in the world. Now, again, these are the views of Gandhiji in his book. Wrote somewhere in his book like the Jews. He wrote something like in his weekly magazine called Harijan. Now, what was India's foreign policy with respect to that? So, like the Mahatma leaders across the Arab world and anti imperialists beyond were upheld by Britain's administration of Palestine and the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which promised Jews a homeland in the British Mandate. The British author wrote about the declaration: one nation solemnly promised to a second nation the country of a third. Gandhi's opinions had a profound impact on Jawaharlal Nehru, and that, along with Nehru's own anti imperialism, was responsible for shaping independent India's foreign policy for decades. India voted against UN Resolution 181 Clause 2, which partitioned mandatory Palestine between Jews and Arabs, and which was adopted by UN General Assembly in November 1947. While India did recognize the state of Israel in 1950, official diplomatic relations were not established until 1992 when P.V. Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister. So again, from this article, you can only refer some of the Gandhi reference, like the Harijan was a weekly magazine in which he talked about some of the relation with Jews. Then the Gandhi's article, The Jews, in which his sympathy for Jews was given. Then his concern for Arabs and how this foreign policy is being framed in our country with respect to Gandhi. So this was related to this article. These two articles again, this one is more important. And for Israel and Palestine conflict, you will see a video in coming days which will explain everything related to Israel and Palestine. Right? So thank you so much for this video.